Welcome back to another iDoctor UK video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front screen on the Samsung A14. To begin the repair, power down the device, then use a SIM ejector tool, or in my case some tweezers, to remove the SIM tray. Removing the SIM tray creates a weak spot in the chassis. You can now take a plastic opening pick and insert it between the edge of the screen and the plastic chassis and the plastic cover, and begin unclipping that back cover. It can be a little bit awkward around the corners. Don't be scared to use a bit of force to do it. But when you get to these buttons, just be careful because there will be a flex cable under there, so you just want to insert a little bit there. Finally, we'll go around this top corner and that should release it. That's the little cable that I'm talking about there. To avoid damaging it, open it from the left hand side just like that. Now that we're into the device, there's 10 crosshead screws that need removing. Go ahead and use a small screwdriver to remove those. If you're using a magnetic screwdriver like me, you might find that some of them don't always come out all the way. And we'll just use tweezers to pull them out the rest of the way. I'd normally use a magnetic mat, but this back cover makes a perfect place to store the screws whilst we're disassembling the device. Next, we're going to take some tweezers, and then I'm going to start in this top corner here to lift this plastic shield up, which will reveal the logic board for the phone. Now that we've got access to the motherboard, I'm going to use a plastic spudger to disconnect the battery, as well as these two flex cables here, and finally the flex cable for the lock button on the left hand edge. This means that we can now release the motherboard from the chassis. Notice how I've left this coaxial cable connected. I always do that. It just makes it a lot easier to put back together when we install it into the new screen. Moving down to the bottom of the phone now, there's another 8 crosshead screws that's holding down the loudspeaker at the bottom, as well as the daughter board for the charging port. Remove all 8 screws and store them safely for later. To remove this cover, take some tweezers and insert it just a little bit into there and begin prying upwards. I've just realised that I've missed out one screw, so that's not going to go anywhere. Anyway, once you've got all the screws removed, you should be able to lift that up fairly easily, just like that. Use your spudger again to disconnect this flex cable here. That should connect to the back of the screen. And then release the coaxial cable and pry underneath this subboard to release it. That's released the daughter board and the motherboard now. We can store that safely for later. Now we're going to begin removing the battery. And the way that these usually work, this is the first time that I've seen these on a Samsung phone, but they have a similar tab system on the Huawei's. Remove these tabs first and then lift this tab up here. To pull out the battery. By just pulling up on that tab there, releasing the battery. I'll sort of snap it off there, look, release it, and that does release the battery. Moving on now, I'm going to get our new pot, and this is the A14 4G version. There is another screen for the 5G version, so make sure that if you're doing this, you've got the right part. This is the SM A14 4, 5. I can see that I need to transfer over the ear speaker onto this chassis, and also the vibration motor needs moving over as well. The vibration motor comes out pretty easy with some tweezers, just get it under that spot there. Same for the ear speaker, there's a little notch down the bottom here, get the tweezers underneath it and carefully pry upwards. Just like that to release it. Now make sure when we're putting this back in that the pins there what are sticking out higher go on the bottom, the same way that it came out. So directly transferring this from one part to the other. Same for the vibration motor down the bottom here. Peel back the adhesive for the battery and then secure that into place just there.
Yeah, that's it.
Now we're just going to reverse the steps that we used to disassemble the device to reassemble the device. Starting off with the daughter board down there. Let's make sure that this coaxial cable goes where it belongs. There's a small groove for it there. And you can see the creases in the cable where it goes around the corner there. Use a plastic spudger to push it down into the groove that it sits in. And make sure that it sits nice and flat into it. Now I'll reconnect the flex cable just here. And install the loudspeaker and plastic cover, followed by the 8 crosshead screws that secure it down. Remember, if you like this sort of repair content, please subscribe for more just like it. And if you're attempting this repair yourself, let me know how you went on in the comments below. If there was anything I did wrong, I'm sure you'd point it out straight away to me. Now we've got those 8 screws in, we're going to move up to the top of the device and realign the motherboard into the chassis. It's fairly self-explanatory, just make sure that it's sat flat and not sat on top of any screw holes. Then reconnect the 2 flex cables for the subboard and the screen, followed by the little flex cable here for the power button. And finally, the battery connector. You can now go ahead with the plastic cover that protects the motherboard and cameras, and resecure the 10 crosshead screws that hold it down. With those 10 screws re-secured, I can just see next to the camera here that the plastic cover's not sat quite right and there's a little tab for it what's stuck out there. Whenever I come across these, I just get the back end of the tweezers and just give it a nice push down to make sure that it's secure. The final thing to do is to re-secure this back cover, and we're just going to fold it over. And I always find the best practice here is to make sure that the button's attached first and begin applying pressure all the way around the device to make sure that it's sat securely into place. There is of course this plastic film on there. Remove that whenever you want. We always leave it on to keep our mucky fingerprints off it before giving it back to the customer. I'm just going to turn it on now. We can see we've got the Samsung logo and the phone's booting. So all that I need to do is reinstall the SIM tray. and this one's just about ready to go back to our customer. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.